Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joined us in Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform. It's year 9 of the war and day 267 of our fight for freedom. And now we will be talking about the situation in our skies. Joining us online is Yuriy Ihnat, the spokesperson of the Air Force Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Good afternoon, Mr. Yuriy. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Yuriy. Today our country suffered another strike by the occupiers. What's the situation as of now? What regions of our country suffered damage by the rockets? What's the most recent information? Can you see me? Because I'm not seeing you. Yeah, can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you, and that's good. So the enemy keeps inflicting strikes on our territory with different types of weapons. We have about 10 strikes today by the S-300 air defense rockets used in the cities along the front lines. Unfortunately, there are casualties among civil population. There was air raid alert all across the country. We know that strategic aviation bombers were used to Tupolev 95. Specifically, they set on the battle course from Caspian Sea and the region of Volgodonsk, of Rostov region in Russia. So a number of aircraft were engaged in the strikes of Ukraine. Traditionally, rockets X-101 and X-555, 18 cruise missiles were shot in our direction. This time, unfortunately, air defense systems didn't work very efficiently. The enemy used some ruse, and now we have strikes. The enemy was aiming at gas mining stations, gas transportation systems, and defense industry enterprises in Dnipro region. Their rockets were also targeted at Kyiv region, central regions. Four missiles were destroyed by Air Force Command in the area of responsibility of Central Air Command. And in the same area, 6 loitering drones Shaheds were destroyed as well, which were shot at us from Belarus. Air defense involved both land forces and air force to shut down both Shaheds and the missiles. There was a use of Caliber cruise missile from the equator of the Black Sea and guided air rockets from the fighter jets from the equator of the Black Sea as well. 2 of them were destroyed by the air defense forces, and we are specifying the information about the last strikes. This is the information what we have at the moment. Mr. Yuriy, we understand that the air raid alert is maybe still on, and we see the information frequently that the time of arrival, estimated time of arrival is 20 or 25 minutes. Some media publish this information. Is that information true? Does it coincide with the actual time of arrival of the rockets? Is it the time which is enough for the people to go to the shelter? Well, you see, air raid alert is announced beforehand when we have information of the strategic aviation or far aviation getting in the air or setting on the battle course, so to say, or about the ship which are going to launch rockets, or we have information about the launch of ballistic missiles acquired by our intelligence. And at the same time as, for example, MiG-31K gets in the air from the territory of Belarus. You know, this time it's not a training air raid alert, and we really see the work of our air defense forces today. It's not as lucky as it was during previous days, because Ukraine which we keep emphasizing all the time, that we don't have enough air defense means to efficiently work on the enemy targets. And we still require more systems that provide 100% result in the areas of their operation, because we cannot disclose the information where IRIS-T is located, where NASAMS are located, but in the areas of their responsibility, whether it is a cruise missile or loitering drone, those air defense systems work 100% on that. That's why we keep emphasizing this to our Western partners, to provide us with more air defense systems, preferably such as IRIS-T, NASAMS, like the modern types of equipment, and we're lacking them to counter the threats that Russian are posing to us. What is the military aid that we're expecting from our Western partners now? Do we know about something coming shortly? Well, you see the latest events, something that happened on the 15th of November and what's going on in the political arena in the world today, the summit of G20 in Indonesia, or like they say G19 now without Russia. Obviously, these issues were discussed there in Ramstein. The issues of military aid to Ukraine were discussed. We recently received 2 batteries, which consist of a number of systems of IRIS-T and NASAMS launch systems, and we also received American Avengers, the mobile air defense system based on the Humvee truck. And we received ASPID from different countries. We received HOG, which is currently being tested, and our specialists are being trained to work on them, and it will be put to the ranks of the Ukrainian Air Defense Forces. So this is the list of what we're currently having in Ukraine and what is working efficiently. Also, we're expecting to receive Jeopards, the self-propelled air defense systems, which are proved efficient against Shaheds. So this is the complex of weapons that we just physically need more of, and which could substantially reinforce at least some areas to efficiently shut down everything flying our way. We have questions in the studio, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Lorenzo Cremonesi from Italian Press, Corriere della Sera. Sir, I have 2 questions, but I ask separately. So we'll ask, first of all, the first one. I know it's a bit too general, too much of a general quality of the general fashion, but I hope you will be able to answer. General Milley, the American general of the chief of staff there, said clearly and repeated in the last days that Ukraine is not able to reconquer all the territory lost. He said that that's why Ukraine should start to find a compromise. I'm asking you from a strictly military point of view. Do you think it's correct? What is your answer to this very clear assertion? Ukraine is not militarily able today to reconquer the ground, the area, the regions in full that was conquered by the Russians.
Разом з тим не будемо забувати про те, що
At the same time, let's not forget that Mark Milley keeps saying that Russia already lost this war strategically and tactically. Please, Mr. Yuriy. That's just a question of time, and it's a question of support of how the world provides the military help to Ukraine. If you see in the eye of a Ukrainian warrior, Ukrainian people, that we would not be able to reconquer all the land captured by the Russians, just in the way like General Zaluzhny and President of Ukraine said, and Minister of Defense Alexei Reznikov, we understand that by all means Ukraine will try to reconquer the land captured by the occupants, whether by military or diplomatic means, and it's the question of time again and the question of support by the world. If the world continues to do what they already started to do, in fact, all the world supports Ukraine. It's just a couple of countries who vote along with Russia in the Security Council of the United Nations. The victory of Ukraine is inevitable. It's just the question of time when it happens. We didn't come to anybody. We didn't kill anybody. What Russia has done as of now, what is offered now, like any negotiations, what do we concede any regions to them, to give them, to let them cut our hand so that they could bite another one after a certain time? Definitely Ukraine will try to stand its ground, even not excluding the negotiations process, if there will be any content to these negotiations, if there are reasons for negotiations. But now that Russia already wrote in their constitution that Kherson region, Luhansk region, Donetsk region is already the regions of Russia, so later that they can add more Ukrainian land to their constitution, should we go to negotiations with them? So no, those negotiations are not worth it. Thank you, Mr. Yuriy. Another question.
Thank you. You're very clear. I really appreciate your answer very, very much, sir. Thank you. Second question. You mentioned the territory. You include the territory conquering by Russia, occupied by Russia in 2014, Crimea and the area so-called autonomous region. You include them, Crimea and the rest. And again, as a military man, how do you see the Russian defense, air defense, I presume, but defense in general of Crimea? Thank you.
We already know that Russia already has a vast line of air defense forces with a short, medium and long range air defense, so they are quite advanced in this issue. What Ukraine has now, Buk 1M and S-300, the Soviet era complexes deployed in Ukraine. Russia had them modernized already, so they're Buk M2, Buk M3, Tor, Panzer, S-350, S-40, they are deployed in Crimea. There is a large concentration of them in Crimea, but the territory of Russia is so big and the front line is so long, it's too long to cover their airspace in full. They have more weapons, more equipment to do it, but we see that they started transporting missiles from Belarus to Donbass and to have them closer to Ukraine, because they do, on a daily basis they use them as the ballistic missiles. So this is maybe why they established these logistics chains. Yes, they have enough air defense means and equipment. They work quite efficiently. We don't have to make any illusions in this regard, but our defense forces have very good weapons provided to us by our Western partners. This is cannon artillery, the howitzers, M777, HIMARS, long-range HIMARS that we have in our ranks now. Russian air defense forces can be destroyed by them and by anti-radar missiles that we have in our ranks, like HARM, American rockets HARM, which quite efficiently destroy Russian air defense equipment, which are specifically developed for destroying air defense equipment. Russian air defense weapons also suffers losses. They don't their real amount of destruction doesn't coincide with what's provided in Russian briefings, because they tell in their reports that they destroy HIMARS on a large scale, but that's not true. No Russian air defense shuts down missile rockets as they really report. So let's make no illusions about this. And maybe this is something that our command and pilots and the whole of Ukraine dream about when the decision will be taken to provide the multi-purpose aircraft to Ukraine. So the situation will change drastically, and Russian air defense will have trouble doing something against that, because Western aircraft like F-15, F-16, F-18 have a very wide range of weapons which can effectively work on the enemy air defense targets, on their different types of enemy weapons. Mr. Yuriy, last question regarding F-16 about training of our pilots. What's the situation at this moment? Did the training already start? Well, you know, if it would have started, maybe the whole information space would have been filled with this information. Unfortunately, we don't have any confirmation of that now about any training of our pilots, because the decision is not yet taken, the final decision to provide any type of fighter jets like this to Ukraine. We're still in negotiations, we're still in the process of consultations, we're developing the roadmap about how Ukraine would be able to receive this aircraft. We have what we have at this moment. We have quite powerful air defense systems at this moment, including Hawks. And at this moment, even Norwegian NASAMS, which are in 12 countries of the world and are needed by Ukraine a lot now, they could help a lot in air defense. You see how massive are the recent strikes, which strike Ukrainian people, which strike residential areas. Now we even see the consequences of this in the European countries, like this latest story with Poland. We know that Moldova suffered some damage because the Russian air defense rocket fell there. So Russia is losing a lot of its offensive potential. Only 85 cruise missiles were destroyed on the 15th of November. So it's minus to their arsenal. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Yuriy. Thank you for joining our air. Dear friends, I will remind you, we had Yuriy Ihnat join us, the spokesperson of Air Force Command. Our next briefing is at 1700. We will have Irina Vereshchuk joining us, Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine, Minister for the Reintegration of Temporarily Occupied Territories. So bear with us. Let's trust in our armed forces and work on our victory together. Glory to Ukraine.